It could be hard to tell if there are problems with the home you'll be buying, especially if those problems aren't something you can see just doing a walkthrough. A title report, however, can give you the information that you'll need to feel secure about making that purchase. Stay tuned to find out what red flags you should be looking for in your title report to make sure that your transaction goes smoothly. When you go into escrow, the title company will have to give you a preliminary title report stating any liens or encumbrances that are on the property. While not all of these items are necessarily red flags on their own, here's what you should look out for. First off are taxes. These are a standard item on a title report and you'll probably see them on there. They show you the status of taxes for the current tax year and any outstanding taxes from previous years. One red flag to look for here is postponed property taxes. This is a program for senior, blind, and disabled homeowners, and it allows them to pay their taxes through a deferral program. These postponed taxes will need to be paid off before closing, and before escrow can order these taxes to be paid off, they need a demand from the court stating that they can do so. Another red flag concerning taxes is a recorded power to sell. If you see this in the title report, that means that the county that the property is located in has already started the process of foreclosing on back taxes for that property. When this recorded power to sell is in the chain of title, you'll have to get that checked out and make sure that it hasn't sold at auction. Otherwise, that can delay your escrow. Another standard item on title reports are conditions, covenants, and restrictions, otherwise known as CC&Rs. These CC&Rs outline any restrictions on the property and any rules that the buyer is going to have to follow once they own that property. And because of this, buyers are going to want to review these documents very carefully, especially if they're planning on making any improvements to the property. Certain CC&Rs can limit what you do to a property and how you improve it, so it's important to make sure that the improvements you're planning are allowed. Depending on the community, they can also have restrictions on things like type or number of pets you're allowed to have, so you should really make sure that these restrictions are in line with what you're planning for your future. A third item that's a standard feature on a title report are easements. The most common type of easement is for public utility, so that companies will be able to access your property to transfer utilities such as power, water, and gas. This also would allow those companies any access for maintenance purposes. Other easements can also be included for access rights. For example, if a neighbor has to get through your driveway to get to their property, then they'll have an easement for access in order to do that. Because you can't make any improvements to the property that'll interfere with the easement, you'll want to request that those easements are plotted out on a map for you so you know exactly where they are and what you'll be able to improve. And sometimes this can include a survey to know exactly where they are. And lastly, once easements are there, they can be difficult to remove, so it's best that you're okay with the easements that are on the property before moving forward. So while easement itself may not be a red flag, you definitely want to know where it is if you're going to be making any improvements to the property. Next up are trust deeds. Also known as a deed of trust, these are common to see on a title report, and they refer to the mortgage on the property. Sometimes you'll see two trust deeds, which can be the result of something like a refinance or an equity line of credit. These will usually be paid off through their escrow process and shouldn't necessarily be a red flag on their own. Old trust deeds from previous owners, however, should be looked into. If there's an old trust deed on the property, that means that it was never reconveyed to the previous owner before the current owner purchased it. In this case, more research will have to be done to reveal whether or not the reconveyance was ever paid for. If it hasn't been, a bond might have to be obtained to remove the trust deed from the title and make sure that it's not on there as an existing debt. In California, these bonds have to cover 2 times the value of the trust deed and can cost anywhere from 1% to 3% depending on the bonding company that you go with. And if you want to avoid this process, make sure that the trust deeds you see on the title report belong to the current owner. Now we'll be moving into less common items that you'll see on a title report, and these will always be a red flag. The first is a notice of violation. These can be recorded by a city or county agency for several reasons, including non-permitted additions and other code violations. Again, these are always a red flag if they're on the title report, and the lender most likely will not lend to you if any notices are still outstanding. In order to move forward, a release is likely going to be required from the government agency who issued the notice. And either the escrow company or the seller is going to have to be the one to deal with that agency directly in order to get that notice removed. A second red flag are judgments. These can either be for monetary lawsuits or other support fees such as alimony and child support. A lender is almost always going to want these liens cleared before authorizing a loan for you, because if they don't, they'll be in a secondary lien position to the judgment, and in the case of a default, that means they might not get their money back. In order to clear the lien, the escrow company is going to have to get a demand and release from the court, which can be a lengthy process. So at this point, that would be something you'd have to decide whether you'd like to wait for or not. If a fence, driveway, or other feature from the property you're purchasing is encroaching on a neighbor's property, then that could be noted in the title report. And an encroachment can also cause issues with your loan. A lot of times, a lender won't go through with a loan on a property that has an existing encroachment unless they have additional coverage against forced removal of those encroachments. Forced removal means that if a neighbor wants you to remove encroachments from their property, you'll be forced to do so and you'll have to pay for that removal. and this can be costly depending on the items that are being removed, so it's best to speak with lawyers and title insurance reps to make sure that you're getting the best title insurance coverage that'll fit your needs. Another immediate red flag are bankruptcies. These aren't common or standard, and open bankruptcies can require court permission in order for the seller to sell the home. And they'll need additional approval from the bankruptcy trustee in order to close that transaction. The trustee can also require that some of the funds that the seller receives from closing go to the court. And depending on what type of bankruptcy the seller has filed, there could be additional requirements in order to close the transaction. And finally, one more red flag on a title report is known as a notice of pending action, or a Lis Pendens. Having a Lis Pendens on the title report means that there's currently some sort of lawsuit being brought pertaining to the property. And in this case, a demand and withdrawal of the action need to be recorded in order for the transaction to close. A Lis Pendens might even need to be expunged in order to be cleared from the title. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that after seeing this, you've learned a little bit more about some of the red flags that you might see on a title report once you get it from escrow. It's important to read through all of these items on a title report and note any red flags so that you know you're making a good purchase. If you did find this video helpful, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing for more real estate content. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me through Instagram or email. They're both linked down below, and I'll catch you in the next video.